Jennifer, I think you muted yourself.
Frank, thank you so much for telling me that. I appreciate that, Frank. I don't know how that happened. All I did was change my gallery view. I wasn't even on that side of the screen. Who
Your
knows?
lips, your lips were moving, but there was no sound.
Okay, maybe I muted myself by accident when I was muting y'all. I bet that's what I did. Okay, thank you, thank you, thank you. So what I was saying, welcome to Maddie. Thank you for joining our group. Thank you for being here, everyone. Hatha for everybody, and we're here every Thursday. Thank you for your patience last week. I apologize. No internet, and I ended up not having it for almost 24 hours. But I made do. Thank goodness for the library across the street. Okay, so today we need a couple of blocks and a blanket, and we're starting reclining. And you could go ahead and lie back on your mats. I'm going to stay seated for the first part, but you go ahead and lie back. Good morning, Susan. Thank you for joining us.
Morning. Yeah, I just need another minute to get myself together.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute you. You come on in, take your time. We're starting reclining. Take your time. And as always, the first thing we'll do is settle into our space. Maybe take a few cleansing breaths to help us wipe the slate clean. Let go of any pent-up energies that might have already accumulated, even though you haven't been up very long. And then take a few moments to assess your surroundings, your field of consciousness. What do you see behind closed eyes, lights and shadows and such? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you feel? What's it like to be in this space? What sensory input are you receiving? That gives us a good indication as to what it's like to be in the space. But there are other detectors as well. Check in. Be mindful about your assessment, establishing a sense of familiarity, safety, and as you've accomplished these things, delve your thoughts inward and start to tap into your awareness. What's going on with you? How does your body feel physically? Note tissues in the body, tightness, lightness. You can label those sensations, or you can simply experience them. Hi, Kitty. Thank you for muting yourself. I see you. We're starting in a reclining position. So we're focusing on the Yoga Sutras this semester. The first written account of what yoga is, written around 600 BC, thousands of years ago, though yoga was practiced many thousands of years prior to that. And once it was written down, everybody started finding out about it. And with the internet today, it is more popular and well known than it ever has been. So it's changing, it's evolving. But the first thing, no matter what kind of yoga you're doing, is you want to assess where you are here and now, right as you begin. So this is why we check in with ourselves in the very beginning. Establishing awareness in our consciousness. Last week we discussed how those are two different things. Being awake is consciousness. Whatever is around you is within your field of consciousness. Your awareness is within you. It's important that we learn to distinguish the two. Yoga helps us get there. So let's get in our first pose. And we'll spend some time in stillness to begin with. So lying back, go ahead and extend your legs out in front of you. And once the legs are extended in front of you, assert some awareness to your position. Line up those mountain lines I'm always asking you to establish. Shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. Put some mindfulness to your positioning. And your feet can be pointing towards the ceiling to give you more strength in your legs, or they can be slightly off to the sides. What works for you? What keeps you more in tune with those lines? And then when you're ready, add arms to it, keeping your arms on the floor, bring them up to shoulder height, T position, and make sure that your hands are truly shoulder height. Sometimes folks do this. They bring their arms up and the hands are way higher than the shoulders. That's applying consciousness to your experience, but not awareness, mindfulness. Hands truly shoulder height. Maybe look at them so that you understand what it feels like to have them truly shoulder height. And start with the hands facing the floor, the palms of the hands facing the floor, and notice how that makes for an internal rotation to your shoulder joints. Be aware of how that affects your arms, that hand position. And let's take a couple more breaths. Maybe check in on your legs. And then as you're ready, turn your hands over. So now the palms are facing the ceiling. Now you have an external rotation in your shoulder joint. And that probably feels different, not just in the joint, but in the biceps, the triceps below in the arm, and the chest and the upper back beyond those shoulders, maybe even in your neck, maybe even in your energetic levels. Maybe feel a little bit more vulnerable, a little bit more open to the world around you, to your field of consciousness. And then one more change, keeping your arms still on the floor. So they stay on the floor the whole time. Go ahead and bend your elbows. And you could bend them into a 90-degree angle or maybe a little bit less. And you might start with kind of like a little bit of a bend and then maybe go a little bit deeper as time goes on, eventually making your way to true cactus arms. It all depends on what's going on in your arms and your shoulders and what your body will allow. This is why we take that assessment in the very beginning. And notice if perhaps deepening the breath, the energetic pathways within your body might help you loosen any blockages that are hampering your physical movement. So, meaning, you could shift with the physical body, or you could shift with that energetic body. Play around with those things, and we'll stay here for about 2 minutes. So, Atta Yoga Nushasanam. Now the teachings of yoga. What is your now? What are you learning from yoga now? What are you learning from you? What does yoga have to teach you today? That was our first lesson on the sutras. And then we talked about the difference between consciousness and awareness. Consciousness is being awake. Consciousness involves what's going on around you, your field of consciousness, actions that are occurring, sounds, sights, what have you. Your awareness is what's going on within you. And in many ways, how you assimilate, what you do with all that information that comes your way. So today, in the next few lines, actually, let me read the first 4 lines, just a few lines of the sutras while you're still there. There are many, there's one sutras, 196 lines, but there are many interpretations. And today I'm reading from Alistair Shearer's interpretations. So the first 4 lines, and now the teaching on yoga begins. Yoga is the settling of the mind into silence. When the mind has settled, we are established in our essential nature, which is unbounded consciousness. Our essential nature is usually overshadowed by the activity of the mind. Those are the first 4 lines. Now the teachings of yoga, where are you now? That's a lot of nows because a lot of people are practicing yoga, so that's open to interpretation. And yoga is settling the mind into stillness. What does that mean to you? Quieting the mind, quieting the distractions so that we can rest in the here and the now, or we can act in the here and the now rather than being overtaken by distractions. Distractions can stir things up and bring anxiety, and we don't want anxiety to be our driving force, because all hell breaks loose when we let anxiety become our driver. Mistakes happen, problems occur, suffering occurs. Let's go 5 more breaths, 5 more breaths in this position. So if you need to adjust your position, do so. And then connect with your breath. Notice your inhales and your exhales and try to deepen and lengthen. And then when you're ready, make your way from 1 to 5. And focus on what happens with each inhale, with each exhale, with each breath as a whole. Notice how the breath is affecting your position, the physicality of your body, the pose you're in. Notice how this time, how it's affected this pose. Are things starting to settle? Can you feel gravity gently coaxing you down closer to the floor, settling your skeleton, settling your joints? relaxing your muscles, relaxing your nervous system. When we relax our bodies physically, we relax that nervous system. Yoga means to connect, to unite. So when you finish your 5 breaths, take your time with that. Take your time with that. Once you finish those 5 breaths, we'll make our way bit by bit back to where we were. We'll extend our arms back out to a T position and stay there for a couple of breaths. Avoid rushing these transitions. That way you'll really notice. And then you can keep your arms there, because the next thing we'll do are windshield wipers. So when you're ready, you can bend your knees, feet on the floor. And maybe your hands are facing the ceiling. Maybe you'd rather have them facing the floor. And you might even want to bring them a little closer to your body. And then when you're ready, start your windshield wipers. And let your knees go from side to side, right to left. Keep the feet on the floor. And I like to bring my feet away from each other. I don't let my feet touch each other, because that gives me plenty of room, plenty of width to my legs and my hips, which is what this is all about. Opening up the hip joints and loosening up and releasing tensions in the legs, also in the torso. So let's bring the head into it. Head going from one side to the other with the knees. And let's bring the breath into it, inhaling with one motion, exhaling with another. That breath coordination keeps you present, keeps you mindful. And at some point, make it so your head is going in the opposite direction of your knees. Putting even more of a twist, sensation, and action to your windshield wipers. And we'll go a few more rounds. Notice, are things starting to pick up? Are your energetic levels starting to become a little bit more enlivened? Maybe your breath is becoming a little bit clearer and deeper. Because sometimes I'll start to breathe in the morning. I'm like, oh, I can't really breathe today. But when I start to breathe and deepen and lengthen, I work through those blockages. So maybe you're experiencing that too. And as always, be mindful of where you started and end on the opposite side, so that you're balanced in your motions, and come back to the center. You're back in your 2-legged table, and stay there for a couple of breaths in your 2-legged table and feel the effects of those windshield wipers. Avoid doing anything, just hang out there. Another breath or two. And then when you're ready, we'll make our way into Apanasana. Draw your belly in towards your spine to engage those core muscles before you hug your legs into your body. And make sure your hands are on the legs somehow, some way, to give you stability. And start to move your feet. We'll start small, circling, pumping the feet. And do a few rounds of that with the feet and knees close, and then do it with the feet and knees wide apart, because you might access different muscles as you make that little change. Notice. And then at some point, you could start to move the body, the torso, maybe rock from side to side. Maybe do some hip rolls. And if you do hip rolls, make sure you go in either direction. Be mindful that you're maintaining balance. Make sure your head and neck are neutral so that you're not straining your neck. Keep the belly drawn in so you're not straining your back. We'll take a few more breaths. And if ever you find your mind wandering, thinking about breakfast or your afternoon meetings, that's okay. You're human. Do your best. Draw yourself back in. Maybe notice what took you away and then resume to the practice. And the more you do it, the better you get at it. Okay, so now let's make our way up to a seated position. In this semester, I'm building on this same practice. So we're doing the same thing each week, but then we're adding different elements and challenging ourselves a little bit more each week, evolving, pretty much mirroring how the sutras are laid out. And by the way, the sutras, again, 196 short lines called aphorisms, sutra meaning thread, very short phrases. Some of them have only 3 or 4 words, others have maybe about 8 or 9. And they're written in Sanskrit, the sutras, and Sanskrit has a very melodic pace and beauty to it. So these words are often chanted, and there's real meaning to the chanting and the actual hearing. So if ever you get a chance, maybe you could listen to the Yoga Sutras in Sanskrit. And even though you don't understand the words, hear the beauty and the rhythm of the language and see what it does for your body. It's chanting is very therapeutic, very meditative. Okay, let's move on. Let's establish a good seated pose. Remember, you could have your legs extended. You don't have to look like me. You could have blocks, something under your bum like I do. I feel that's necessary. And when you've established that good foundation, let's do our rainbows. We've been doing these a lot. Try to use the inhale to extend and reach towards the heavens, and use the exhale to land and curve and connect with the earth. And notice how that keeps you sound and helps you maintain a good foundation from which you're more likely to flourish, or at least evolve safely. Let's go a few more. Eyes can be open, or if you want, close the eyes. These are patterns of consciousness, often described as distractions. So your field of consciousness, your visual field of consciousness, may offer you distractions. So it's okay to close those eyes so that you can feel a little bit more what's going on inside. And maintaining balance, remember what side you started on, and on the opposite. And we'll meet back in the center. Take your time doing that. If you need another round to do that, go for it. And we'll take a few moments of quiet back in our seated position. The whole purpose of our yoga is to condition the mind, body, and breath so that we can sit still. Let's take 3 more breaths in our stillness. Notice how you're feeling after those 3 breaths of stillness. Notice how you responded. It can be hard to sit still. You might have fidgeted. That's a distraction. Yoga helps us work through those fidgets, those distractions. Yoga helps us, shut out what's going on around us as well. So now let's make our way into a butterfly position. Hook up the soles of the feet as best you can. Those three corners, the heels, the balls of the big and little toes, and make sure the feet are slightly far away so you're not crowding your pelvis, and put your hands high up so you're not crowding or hunching over in your butterfly. So avoid, and we don't want to be grabbing the bottom part of our body. That brings us forward. Be mindful of the positioning and how it affects your body. And we'll take 3 breaths here. Notice how the breath affects your butterfly. Notice what happens, particularly in your shoulders, your hips, and your knees. How have things progressed? Does your butterfly feel different after that time and patience there? And now let's do our butterfly flies. Keeping your hands still, go ahead and close your wings, curve to the back, drop the head down. Then press into the earth, open your wings, curve to the front, lift the head up, and go back and forth, establishing your range of motion, your pace, the breath. Exhaling as you come back and down, inhaling as you come up and front. And be mindful of how the head is following the neck. The neck is part of your spine, and the spine is doing most of the movement here. It's the center of the movement, curving to the back and to the front. Notice your earth connections and how they can help propel you more readily. Try to keep those joints soft, the knees, the shoulders, even the elbows and wrists, even the knuckles in your hands. And let's do 2 more rounds. We started in the back, so we'll end in the front, and then you can reconnect with your butterfly and take a couple of breaths to reconnect with that butterfly, and then reconnect with your breath, and then take 3 nice long breaths in your butterfly and notice. What sensations arise from breath to breath? And how do you work through those sensations? Do you give in to them, or do you just kind of let them work themselves out and float on by? You don't have to give in to every single distraction. You can just let some things be and let them work themselves out on their own, and notice how that can affect your nervous system. Practice. Okay, so now let's extend our legs out. Let's shake them out. Let's tap them out. If you're wearing socks like I am, this is a good time to take them off, because the next thing we'll do is our downward facing dog exploration. So we'll explore dogs for about 3 or 4 minutes. I want to give you plenty of time, and you have options. You can do a floor version, or you can do a wall version, and I'll make sure to demo both. I'll start on the floor, and take your time getting ready, taking your socks off, because socks can be distractions, because that can make you a little bit slippy on the floor. This jacket would totally distract my dog. So I'm going to take my jacket off. I'm going to make sure my hair is right. I'm going to make sure I've got my blanket for my knees. And if I'd rather do a wall version, I'm just going to get up and do a wall version. And, you can take a few moments in your table and kind of, wag your tail. And as always, whenever you lift up to your first down dog, ease into it. Avoid going into even your 50% dog. Start lightly and ease into it, bringing some movement, working through those initial kinks. If you go right away to your 100% dog, you might harm yourself. You might go somewhere where your body is not ready. You want to apply mindfulness to your experience. I'm going to lift up and do the wall version. And by the way, as always, with our dogs, rest whenever you need to. You could rest in a table, you could rest in a child's pose, or you could rest in a mountain pose if you're doing a wall version. And if you're doing the wall version, make sure your hands are always higher than your shoulders. That's a very important alignment principle. Strong leg muscles, strong glute muscles, strong torso muscles working in tandem to support your dog exploration. Be mindful of using these big muscles and be mindful of providing those muscles with the nutrition they need, oxygen. Big, deep inhales and exhales. And rest when you need to. And I'm going to come back down and then go over the next few lines of our sutras. We reviewed the first few lines. Yoga Chitta Vritta Nirodha. Yoga is to still the patterning of consciousness. Chitta. Chitta means consciousness. Consciousness means being awake. Consciousness is what you experience in the world around you, what your senses are telling you. Vritti, yoga's chitta vritti, those are movements, distractions within the field of consciousness. And it's important that we don't confuse the two, that we learn to understand the distinctions between the two. Patanjali tells us that these distractions are either benign or harmful. And there are 5 types of patterns of consciousness, and that's what we'll start to talk about today as we move on. 5 types of patterns of consciousness. And you continue your dog exploration as you listen to this Dharma, which means wisdom, lessons. There are 5 types of patterns of consciousness. They are right perception, misperception, imagination, sleep, and memory. Right perception, meaning sound, solid information. Misperception, meaning false information. Imagination, what you do with all that information and how you perceive it. Sleep, that's interesting. And memory. So he defines sleep as a pattern of consciousness. Sleep is when we rest and we assimilate everything that has happened in the day and put it all together and file it away in all the different places in the brain. That's what sleep is about. Taking in the day. And memory is what we wake up with. And these patterns of consciousness define who you are. So let's go about 5 more breaths in our dog exploration. So you might want to do one more big old dog, because your dogs have probably gotten big. Maybe you're doing your 3-legged dogs. Maybe you're doing some dogs and planks. Maybe you've had your fill of dogs and you want a little bit of rest. Take a rest. And as we take these final 5 breaths, no matter what you're doing, whether you're challenging yourselves physically in a dog or whether you're challenging yourself mindfully and resting and being quiet, use that breath to help you stay focused on the moment at hand. And when you're ready, we'll make our way up into a standing position. So take your time and be mindful in how you come up. Each week I ask that you hinge at the hips and that you use your legs, your torso, your legs and your glutes, and in tandem with that torso to lift you up, to hinge at your hips. So you're not rolling up, old school, you're lifting up, keeping that back safe. So that's right information. That's right perception right there. So, it's important that you listen to people who have a little bit more experience. But it's also important that you understand that no one is perfect and everyone is fallible, and we want to make sure that we're finding right information. We want to build our foundations on right information. So let's go into a mountain pose. And as always, when I ask us to go in a mountain, I remind you to line your body up, because you might forget. You might bring your feet out a little bit wide because you're not being aware. You're just going with the flow. I want you to be mindful. Line up the shoulders over hips, over knees, over ankles, and be mindful that you find the 3 corners in your feet, the heels and the balls of the big and little toes. Drawing a little triangle in each foot. And there's your imagination. Drawing a triangle in your feet and noticing the energy coming up your body. And that's part of your perception. And from here, let's do some strengthening chair poses. So we've got the body well aligned. Let's keep it simple. Raise your arms, bend your knees, hinge your hips. 3 simple instructions to keep you focused and undistracted, not putting more into it than needs to be into it. Less is more. The more we put into things, the more can go wrong. When you're ready, inhale your arms up, exhale your arms down. So I gave you a little bit more instruction to come out using the breath. Let's continue with that. So good, strong body, engage the muscles. Inhale the arms up, press the feet into those 3 corners to help you bend and hinge. Keep your belly drawn in to control the arch of your back. Soften your shoulders so you're not straining yourself. Those arms. 1 or 2 more breaths. You can come out sooner, you can stay longer. When you are ready to come up, use the breath. Inhale up, exhale down, and take 2 breaths. Where do you feel it? How do you feel it? And I'll let you in on a little secret. I'm dying to scratch my chin because there's a little piece of hair that's blowing in the wind and it's distracting me. But yoga has taught me to not give in to scratching every little urge. Let's do one more. Good foundation. And I'm going to scratch it because now I'm like, I want to make sure it's not distracting me while I'm in the heat of things. Foundation, use your breath. Inhale with the lifting, exhaling with the lowering and coming down to earth. Keep the belly drawn in. Notice what you're looking at. If you're looking at your knees and your feet, you've got your head down too much. You don't want to move your head. Your head moves because your body moved. Keep that head in the same position as if it were in that mountain. And come on up with the breath as you're ready. And take a couple of breaths, feeling the experience. Soak in and fade away. And when you're ready, let's do some some warrior ones. And then we'll play with some warrior twos. And there's generally confusion between warrior one and warrior two. So I want to slow down our understanding of these two poses to make sure that we are working with right information and that we are not making mistakes in our foundation poses. So we start in mountain, and notice in mountain, you're on railroad tracks, your feet. One is to the right, one is to the left. So you've got 2 tracks, one on each track, right? So when you step your right foot back, you're still on those tracks. So you've got distance between front and back, but you still have width between right and left, as if you were still on those railroad tracks. So that means we're still facing the front. Now you have to pivot your foot a little bit in the back to step that foot back. So notice where that foot is. If you turn the foot way out, so it's facing the wall beside you, that's going to turn your body. So be mindful of where that foot is facing. It should be facing more towards the front than the side. And that will help ground you as you bend your knee and lift your arms. So we're facing the front in our warrior one. And our knee and our toes are facing the front. They're facing the same direction. And our knee is not going beyond that ankle. That's really important. Let's lower those arms. Let's extend that leg. Let's step forward and take 2 breaths. And when you're ready, see if you can use your breath to build your pose. Inhale, step left foot back, railroad tracks. When you're ready, try to use an exhale to bend the knee. And when you're ready, try to use an inhale to lift the arms. And the whole time, keep the feet rooted. Keep the belly drawn in. Legs and torso are working. Glutes are working to keep you strong, that you're not just mindlessly shaping your body into this shape. And when you're ready to come out, exhale the arms down. Inhale, step forward. 2 breaths. Let's do it again. When you're ready, inhale, step the right foot back. When you're ready, exhale, bend the front knee. When you're ready, inhale the arms up. Take your time. Avoid rushing these movements. And once you're here, notice, fine tune it. Are your hips even? Sometimes I'll see one hip is higher than the other. You want to make sure those hips are even even though one is extending and the back one is extending, the front one is flexing. Keep them even. And when you're ready to come out, exhale down, inhale, lift forward, and take a couple of breaths. We're still in that warrior one experience, even though we're out of it. We're still feeling the energies of it. This is rest time. This is establishing memory. So those 5 things that we do in life, it's all on the mat. Right perception, misperception, imagination, rest, memory. So when you're ready, step your left foot back with the inhale. And when you're ready, try to use the inhale to bend and the inhale to lift. And we'll take a couple of breaths, feeling the experience, understanding the experience, fine-tuning the experience. And when you're ready to come back, use the exhale to lower and the inhale to come forward. And take a couple of breaths. And I'm smiling at myself because I think I just messed up. I think I just kind of got us all off kilter. So this is part of information and misinformation. I think I just went to the first side, the second side immediately. I think I'm a little off. So we're going to do another warrior one on the other side and work through my little snafu. Forgive me, and we'll move on. And this is part of your field of consciousness. You know, what do you do with when someone around you makes a mistake? Do you hate them for it, or do you forgive them for it? Let's do one more warrior one. So now we're stepping the right foot back. And we're making our way bit by bit. Good, strong foundation supporting that upper body. Attention to detail will keep you stronger and keep you more supported, allowing you to flourish and to rise to the challenges with ease. So once you're back in your mountain, take a couple of breaths. Notice how you feel. And kind of shake it out when you're ready. Let's march it out a little bit. Okay, so now warrior one, we face the short side of the mat, to the front of our mat, right? Now warrior two, we're facing the long side of our mat. So when you're ready, let's step the right foot back. We're on railroad tracks. But now we want to take that back foot and we want to slide it in and line it up with the front foot. So now our feet are on a balance beam. So actually look at your feet. They should be lined up, front foot lined up with the back foot. Now you're facing the long side of your mat. But when you bend the knee is pointing the same direction as it did in that warrior one, i.e. towards the front, the short front. And your arms come up and you're looking that way. Notice the difference between the feet, between warrior one and warrior two, and how it affects your body. And make sure that you are facing the side with your body. Your head is facing the front, not your body. So if you're turning your body to look at the front, that's misperception. You want that body to be facing the long side. And when you're ready, as always, exhale the arms down, inhale forward, and take a couple of breaths to feel the experience. Notice how your mountain feels. And when you're ready to do the other side, step the left foot back. You're on railroad tracks. Now line it up. Now you're on a beam and you're facing the long side of the mat. But when you bend that front knee, it's still facing the front, the short end, the same direction as those toes. And your arms are mimicking that long line that your body is facing. And when you're ready to come out, try to use the exhale to lower and the inhale to step forward. And take a couple of breaths. Feeling the experience gently soak in and fade away. This is part of your imagination and your conceptualization. Getting inside and feeling, and maybe even attaching colors to the feelings that are going on in your body. So many different ways for you to conceptualize your experience. Let's do it again one more time on each side. And this time I will do it from this side so that when I open out, I'm facing you. So you're in your mountain pose in the front. When you're ready, step your right foot back, line it up with the front foot. Now you're facing the long side. And when you're ready to bend the knee, it's bending, facing the short side. And the arms are reminiscent of the long line of your mat. And make sure that your chest is facing the long side, that you're not unconsciously facing the front of your mat with your body. That's a misperception. We want the chest to be lined up with the long side. It's just the head that turns. And when you're ready to come out, exhale the arms down, inhale forward. 2 breaths. And let's do the other side. When you're ready, left foot steps back with the inhale, lines up with the front foot. Take your time. We don't want to rush through these things. So if you need extra breaths for all these things, take your time, do that. When you bend the knee, try to do it with an exhale. When you lift those arms, try to do that with an inhale. And soften your shoulders as those arms are lifted, because that makes it easier to turn that head. Make sure your knee's not going past the ankle. Make sure the knee and the toe are pointing in the same direction. That's so important. That's going to keep your knee safe. Make sure your body is facing the long side of your mat. It's just your head that's turned to the short. And when you're ready, do your best to exhale the arms down and inhale, power through that lifting back up. What do you feel like? Let's do some triangles. Actually, it's getting pretty late. Let's kind of shake it out. Let's do a tree on either side, and we'll do it twice, and then we'll come back down to the floor. So trees, we've done a lot of in the past. We did them last week. Go anywhere you want. Make sure that you have what you need to build a successful tree. And think about what kind of tree you want. It doesn't have to be a full-fledged tree that you see on the front of a journal, a magazine. It can be really low-key. Build your tree as you're ready, bit by bit. Fine-tune it. And be mindful of your experience. Keep the breath present. And when you're ready, dismantle your tree bit by bit. Slowly but surely, and try to land right back in that mountain, and do your best to stay still in your mountain for a couple of breaths, letting that tree gently recede. Still feeling that tree even though you're out of it, and see how that can inform your next tree. Shifting to the left leg, building your tree, stabilizing it, and then check in with the elements of the tree that you've built. Fine tune your tree. What's needed? Both legs working, belly drawn, heart lifted, shoulders soft, looking straight ahead at the horizon line. Using the breath to dismantle the tree when you're ready. And stay in your mountain for a couple of breaths after that tree. And if you need something between the two rounds of trees, go for it. So if you need a little bit of movement, go for it. And then when you're ready, reconnect with your mountain. And then when you're ready, start to build another tree on the right. Maybe this one is a little bit bigger or more confident, more structured. Be mindful of your experience to the very end, to the dismantling and the beyond. You're resting, you're establishing memory before you go on to the next side. Right information, probably some little mistakes along the way. Imagination work here. Do you feel like a tree? Mindful as you deconstruct. Mindful of the remnants. Sometimes I even challenge myself to stay still longer than I had planned. Like I planned 3 breaths of stillness and then I go to 5 breaths. All those little tricks help me to learn to stay mindful and present. Okay, so now a little bit of movement because you might have built up some blockages. Let's go ahead and sit back down for the last part of our practice. So bring everything you need for Shavasana, and we'll meet in a seated position. Let's meet in staff position, which means our legs are extended in front of us. And if you struggle sitting on the floor, sit on a blanket, because struggling to sit on the floor is a distraction. Remember, those distractions can be physical in our bodies. They can be part of our field of consciousness, what we see. It can be what's going on inside of us. Interoception, your ability to sense what's going on inside of you, that's part of your field of consciousness. But it's tapping more into your awareness, because only you know what's going on inside of you. So as always, whenever we're in this position, we want to line up the shoulders, the hips, the knees, the ankles. We want these basic mountain alignment principles intact. And if you pretend like your feet are standing on an imaginary floor, then you can bring those 3 corners into it, your triangles. And notice how that engages the leg muscles. And even the weight on the sits bones, and that might help you engage your glutes a little bit more, your glute muscles in your bum. Draw your belly in towards your spine to help you start engaging your core muscles. Squeeze the ribs gently with the muscles in and around those ribs. Lift your heart slightly and feel your pectoralis, your chest muscles at work, even your upper back muscles, your trapezius muscles. But be mindful that your shoulders are soft, lengthening your neck. And look straight ahead at the horizon line. So if you're looking slightly up, your chin will lift, and that will strain your neck and your shoulders. We want a neutral neck and head. And likewise, I see a lot of this in the yoga rooms where people drop their head. That's hard on that lower back. Keep that head lifted and you'll learn to strengthen those muscles to protect your back. Let's take 3 more breaths in our Dandasana, staff pose. If you want to fidget, notice how the breath can help work through that urge to fidget. Fidget means we want movement. Well, you can bring movement to the body with that breath, expanding and softening. Once you finish the 3 breaths, let's shake it out. And then let's lie back on our backs. And each week I ask you to lie back with the knees bent. So be mindful that you're lying back with your knees bent, because that means you're engaging your leg muscles, your glute muscles, and that will help you with that journey down. Draw your belly in to protect your back. And then you have come down mindfully and you've landed in a 2-legged table, which is where we start the last part of our practice. We'll always start the last part of our practice from a 2-legged table. So let's stay here for a few more breaths, giving you plenty of time. And let's bring our arms by the sides. And let's make sure that we've got those mountain lines intact. Shoulders, hips, knees, ankles. And then find the 3 corners of each foot, a triangle in each foot. Root into those corners evenly. And your feet can be right under your knees or they can be slightly out in front, as long as they're in line, those lines. And when you're ready, let's press into the earth and lift our hips up into the air. Lift the legs up into the air and try to maintain those 2 lines. Shoulders, hips, knees, and ankles as you lift up, meaning that you're using your muscles in the legs evenly to lift you and to eventually lower you back down. Squeeze the muscles as you come back down. And once you're all the way down, then release those muscles and feel the effects of that bridge pose. And then we'll do a couple more. Make sure your head and neck are neutral. So if you're straining your neck, that's going to affect and distract a good sound bridge. Find those mountain lines. You've got those alignment principles intact. Your joints are lined up. Your muscles are evenly working as you lift. Maybe go a little higher this time. Squeeze the legs, the glutes. Draw the belly in, squeeze the ribs, maybe lift the belly, the heart up. Feel those upper muscles working as well. Working in tandem to bring you back down, one vertebra at a time. Slow, careful descent. Couple of breaths, feeling that experience. Soak in and fade away. And when you're ready, gear things up. Strengthen the body. We'll do one more. Press into the earth. Engage the muscles to lift, to lift, to lift, to sustain, to maybe go higher. Keep that belly drawn in so that you're not straining your back as you arch it. And come back down. Keep the belly drawn in as you lower so that you don't harm your back in that back bend. That's good sound information that's going to keep you safe. And once you're back down, take a couple of breaths. Feel the effects gently soak in and fade away. And then walk your feet further out. And then let's do a few windshield wipers, letting the knees go from side to side. And let's start first just with the knees, and then bring the head into it. And let's go in the opposite direction, head going in the opposite direction of the knees. And let's do 2 more of these. Releasing that low back. Coming back to center, trying to end on the opposite side from which you began, as always. Back in the center for a 2-legged table. And let's draw the belly in before we hug our knees into our chest so we don't strain our back as we bring those legs in. And we were here earlier, maybe some foot movement, maybe some rocking, things that we did earlier. And notice how your Apanasana feels now. Has it changed? What did you learn from your yoga today? What did your yoga teach you? Come on back to a 2-legged table when you're ready. And stay there for a couple of breaths. And if you want props under your thighs, you could take your blanket, your blocks, and you could place them under your thighs. And wriggle in and settle in, and eventually let go of tensions in the bodies. Release and relax. Soften your legs, your glutes, your belly, your chest, your back, your shoulders, your arms, your neck, your face and head. Soften as much of your body as you can, releasing into the weight and the shape of your body. I'm going to lift back up, but you stay right where you are. There are 5 types of mental activity. They may or may not cause suffering. These 5 types of mental activity are understanding, misunderstanding, imagination, sleep, and memory. So Patanjali tells us that our life is based on these 5 types of mental activity. And that yoga is just a small example of our life. It's like a microcosm of life. What happens on the mat is a snippet of what happens off the mat, because the mat gives you a chance to be tasked with challenges, to respond to those challenges, to rise to those challenges, but to not let those challenges overtake us so that we become anxious and not fun to be around, or not fun to be ourselves with ourselves, you know. So what did your yoga teach you today about yourself? And how might you apply those lessons to life off the mat? And maybe put it another way. What distracts you the most? Knocking you off of track and your life's purpose? And how might yoga bring you back on track? And it's okay to ponder these things, these last few moments in your Shavasana, because this is part of the here and the now. And as you're ready, slowly start to stir yourselves, and start small. Start with the breath, deepening and lengthening the breath, stirring yourselves with that movement, and then follow up with finger and toe movement, and then move on to hands and feet, and eventually arms and legs. Draw the belly in before you bring those larger entities into that bodily movement. Be mindful. And once you're in your 2-legged table for a couple of breaths, bring the knees to one side and roll to that side and stay there for a couple of breaths. And then when you're ready to come up, gently press into the earth with the limbs coming up from the side of the body. Do your best. Do your best to follow those instructions, because they're based on wisdom that's been passed down for generations. It's easier on your body. It's easier on your nervous system to come up from the side. And if you've come up with ease, you're more likely to carry on this cool, calm, collected mindset, not only for the last part of our practice, but perhaps for the rest of your day. How do you feel now that you've practiced? What does it feel like to be you now? Let's do a mudra today. Let's connect the tips of all of the fingers each finger and it's the corresponding finger on the other hand, and put a little bit of a roundness to your knuckles, Haikini Mudra, and hold this on your belly, on your solar plexus. Haikini Mudra is the goddess of unity, and this symbolizes our unifying our bodies, minds, and spirit to establish a sense of serenity and harmony within our heart minds, within our field of consciousness, and within our bodily awareness. One more breath. And then Anjali Mudra, may you be safe, happy, and free from suffering. Namaste. And thank you so much for your practice. Thank you. Thank you. I will turn off the recording.